After deciding to marry my boyfriend Raymond, I excitedly planned a visit to his family's home for formal introductions. On the designated day, however, I faced an unexpected and harsh rejection from his relatives. Their stern directive was clear: never reach out to us again. Your voice is unwelcome. It became apparent that their vanity and pride in their physical appearance had bred a culture of coldness and jealousy towards anyone who possessed qualities they lacked. Unfortunately, I became the unwitting victim of their envy, with even Raymond's father and brother tacitly endorsing this dismissive stance. As time passed, I managed to craft a clever retaliation against them. Now, at 29, I find myself enjoying peaceful, joyful days surrounded by my husband's love, our cherished child, and the unwavering support of my parents. This happiness dates back 4 years to when I was 25, a time marked by the beginning of my relationship with Raymond, who was then a colleague and eventually became my partner. Raymond won me over with his kindness and universal likability. Known at work for his aversion to conflict and forgiving nature, he quickly became a central figure in my life. His proposal came after many shared interests and countless movie dates, which had turned our work friendship into a blossoming romance. His proposal filled me with immense joy, and without hesitation, I agreed to marry him, eager to support his ambitions, including his dream of starting his own business. The following weekend, Raymond and I visited my family to share our engagement news. Raymond charmed my parents effortlessly, bonding with my father over drinks and engaging in conversations. My parents, taken with Raymond's warm and affable nature, joyfully welcomed him into the family. Observing Raymond integrate so seamlessly into my family dynamics confirmed how right we were for each other. Our next step was to meet Raymond's family, about whom I knew very little. As we prepared for this encounter, I couldn't have anticipated the stark contrast in reception that awaited us. Dismissing any doubts, I assumed Raymond's independence might have resulted in sporadic contact with his family. The evening before our visit, during a relaxed phone conversation, Raymond hinted, "My parents might seem a bit odd, but don't worry about it too much." His words stirred a slight anxiety within me. But with the night approaching, I decided to put my concerns to rest and went to bed around 11 p.m. The next day, Raymond and I renewed our spirits at the train station and set off together to his family home. It was my first visit to his ancestral residence, and despite my efforts to remain calm, a nagging unease persisted. As we walked, Raymond's voice became a distant murmur against the rapid beating of my heart. Ahead stood a grand mansion, like something out of a fairy tale, with a vast garden that added to my nervous anticipation about the life Raymond had led in such luxurious surroundings. His comforting smile briefly eased my worries as he asked, "Feeling nervous? It's all right, let's go in." We were greeted warmly by my mother-in-law at the grand entrance. Her graceful presence and impeccable style radiated elegance, momentarily alleviating my anxiety. Inside, except for my mother-in-law, the rest of the family welcomed me with reserved smiles, which somewhat relaxed my initial discomfort. I was soon drawn into the living room for a pleasant dinner conversation, and we proudly announced our engagement. The family, especially my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, showed genuine excitement about welcoming me into their fold, saying, "We're thrilled to have such a charming addition to our family." Their warm reception deeply touched me, fostering a sense of belonging. As the evening unfolded, I engaged more with Raymond's relatives. His father, who managed a successful company specializing in package tours, and his brother, an executive with aspirations of leadership, both shared intriguing aspects of their careers. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, both homemakers, enriched their lives with pursuits like dance and flower arranging. My sister-in-law, with her impeccable style and confidence, made a particularly strong impression. My father-in-law's kindness and engaging demeanor further soothed any lingering nerves. His interest in my career led to a conversation where I shared that I was permanently employed at the same company as Raymond, having joined right after graduating from Harvard University. His evident pride and admiration as he commended my accomplishments were deeply reassuring. The praise from him and Raymond left me feeling embraced and valued within this new family circle. I felt a mix of slight embarrassment and deep gratitude as Raymond's family showered me with words of support and admiration. My journey to achieving this recognition was not easy. It took me to a prestigious university in the United States, where I sacrificed countless nights of sleep to excel in my studies. During my high school years, my parents worked tirelessly, despite their limited means, to afford my college education. Fueled by a strong determination to succeed and eventually repay my parents for their sacrifices, I dedicated myself fully to every endeavor. As we engaged in lively dinner conversation, I suddenly noticed a drop in chatter from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. A wave of apprehension washed over me, urging me to shift the conversation. Noticing a beautiful floral arrangement on the table, I complimented it, only to be met with a sharp retort from my mother-in-law. She questioned the sincerity of my interest in what she called housewives' pastimes, given my professional background. Confused by her sudden change of tone, I struggled to understand the hostility. Echoing her sentiments, my sister-in-law hinted that my academic achievements might lead me to view their hobbies as trivial. I had never intended to imply such a thing and found myself speechless, fighting back tears of frustration. Raymond quickly stepped in, defending my character and rebuking their unfounded assumptions. His intervention brought me some comfort, but I remained quiet, my eyes cast downward. I noticed my father-in-law, who had been drinking since noon, now sleeping on the sofa, and my brother-in-law, disinterestedly scrolling through his phone. The tension in the room was palpable. Sensing this, Raymond tactfully suggested we end the gathering, offering a much-needed escape from the stifling atmosphere. As we headed back to the station, Raymond apologized for the day's events, explaining, "I'm sorry about today. My mom and sister are quite proud and sensitive about their educational background." He later shared that his mother-in-law had started working at a flower shop right after high school, where his father-in-law first fell for her, captivated by her beauty, which drew many customers. His persistent pursuit eventually led to their marriage, with him still deeply enamored by her. Similarly, his sister-in-law had reconnected with Raymond's brother-in-law at a high school reunion. Enchanted by her transformation, he pursued her relentlessly until they became a couple, much like his father-in-law, who seemed to acquiesce to his wife's wishes unquestionably. Despite my advanced education, I found it hard to fully grasp their insecurities. They were both attractive women with devoted husbands who adored and protected them. However, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of unease, questioning whether a marriage would truly be as harmonious as I had envisioned. Nonetheless, with the family's blessings now seemingly secured, I hope for a smoother path ahead. We move forward with our wedding plans, fueled by the hope that open communication could bridge any divides between our families. "Rest assured, Nancy, I'll always stand by your side," Raymond reassured me, injecting a dose of optimism into our preparations. After months of meticulous planning, the day before our wedding was suddenly disrupted by an unexpected phone call from Raymond's mother. As Raymond's voice rose in disbelief, I listened in shock to his revelation that his parents had decided not to attend our wedding, citing a previously booked trip for the same day. Stunned and bewildered by this unforeseen development, we tried to contact them for an explanation, but our efforts were met only by the incessant ringing of unanswered calls. Perplexed by the sudden change, we hurried to Raymond's parents' house, only to find it dark and seemingly abandoned, an indicator of their absence. I shared my concerns with Raymond, recalling the tense atmosphere during my previous visit, and wondering if I had inadvertently offended his mother and sister. Raymond attributed their behavior to their prideful nature, acknowledging that highly intelligent individuals often display stubborn tendencies. However, he remained unsure of any specific grievances they might have held. Puzzled by his father's absence as well, Raymond noted that both his father and brother-in-law tended to defer to their wives, likely aligning with them to avoid conflict. His distress was palpable, leaving me at a loss for words. Ultimately, our attempts to contact Raymond's family proved futile, and we were compelled to proceed with the wedding without their presence. We were left bewildered by the unfolding events, struggling to understand why they would prioritize a trip over their son's wedding. My parents showed understanding, yet their expressions hinted at their complexities, burdening me with guilt for causing them distress on what should have been a joyous occasion. During the reception, whispers circulated among our guests about Raymond's parents' absence. Even our boss, who graciously offered a toast, inquired about their whereabouts, leaving us grappling for an appropriate response. Faced with the dilemma of revealing the truth, we opted to deflect inquiries by attributing their absence to illness. What was meant to be a day of celebration turned into one fraught with mental exhaustion. Days later, when Raymond and I visited his parents to relay the events of the ceremony, his mother's nonchalant demeanor and lack of remorse cut deeply. Suppressing my sadness to maintain familial harmony, I responded with a strained smile, concealing the hurt that lingered within me. Raymond's voice, filled with a mix of disbelief and frustration, echoed through the room as he confronted the situation. Canceling the day before the wedding with all our relatives absent, is that even acceptable? If you had no intention of attending, you shouldn't have accepted the invitation. From the outset, his sister-in-law's harsh words only intensified the tension. I would have attended if Nancy wasn't the bride, she stated coldly, leaving me spinning in confusion. Before I could even begin to digest her words, Raymond's mother launched into her tirade, trying to shift the blame onto me. Don't lay all the blame on us. I wanted to witness my son's special day, but Nancy, you ruined it. I'm a victim here too. I demand an apology, she declared. Raymond, sensing my astonishment, quickly came to my defense. How can you blame Nancy? She's done nothing wrong, he argued, his voice filled with disbelief. The room fell eerily silent until Raymond's father-in-law spoke up. His voice, heavy with anger, sent chills through the room. Enough is enough. How dare you barge in here on our day off to complain? Is that all you came for? Get out! His harsh words felt like a physical blow, and before we could fully grasp the situation, we were being pushed out of the house. As I hurriedly put on my shoes at the entrance, my mind was overwhelmed with shock and disbelief. Suddenly, a sharp pain in my foot caused me to cry out. Lifting my foot, I discovered a caterpillar wriggling inside my shoe. Recoiling in disgust, I kicked off the shoe and dashed outside, releasing the caterpillar into the fresh air. Standing there, with one shoe on, I caught my breath and noticed my mother-in-law and sister-in-law watching from the doorway, their laughter tinged with malice. "Are you all right?" they asked, their feigned concern sounding hollow. Eager to leave the uncomfortable scene, I mumbled an apology and quickly left, only to be stopped by my mother-in-law's cutting remark. "Nancy, please refrain from involving yourself in our affairs, except for weddings and funerals," she said, her tone final as she closed the door behind me. I was left bewildered and deeply hurt. What had I done to deserve such treatment? All I had wanted was to build a positive relationship with Raymond's family. On the journey home, Raymond showered me with apologies, assuring me that I wouldn't have to endure further interactions with his family. Despite his comforting words, I couldn't shake off the feelings of guilt and confusion. The realization that my mere presence had sparked such disdain from his mother and sister-in-law weighed heavily on me, making me question my place and worth. The next day brought a new wave of distress. My entire body erupted in intense itching. Rushing to the mirror, I saw fiery red swellings covering my skin. A visit to the dermatologist confirmed that the cause was caterpillar stings from the previous day. The relentless itching made sleep elusive for weeks, compounding the unsettling memories of that confrontational visit to Raymond's house. Amidst the ongoing troubles, I observed my brother-in-law tampering with my shoes at the front door, an act that deepened my growing distrust towards Raymond's family. Just when I thought our situation couldn't deteriorate further, Raymond fell ill and was hospitalized with severe stomach pains, later diagnosed as a suspected gastric ulcer. Consumed with worry, I insisted he take time off work, and I accompanied him to the hospital for further tests. Faced with these mounting challenges, I remembered his mother's harsh directive to only contact them for weddings or funerals. Yet I couldn't bear to keep Raymond's condition a secret from his family. Gathering my courage, I called them, my hand shaking as the phone rang, each tone twisting my stomach into tighter knots. Hearing my mother-in-law's voice instantly reignited my aversion to her, a testament to the strained ties between us. "Hello, it's Nancy," I began hesitantly. "I apologize for not keeping in touch. There's something I need to tell you. Raymond has been hospitalized with a suspected gastric ulcer, and he's undergoing tests." Her response was devoid of concern. "A gastric ulcer? Probably from overworking," she said dismissively, adding, "Please spare me such trivial matters. I'm busy." Her indifference to her son's health shocked me. "Trivial? Don't you care about Raymond?" I responded, frustration boiling over. "I won't bother you anymore. I'll call Raymond directly," I concluded, my voice laden with disappointment. Before I could hang up, my brother-in-law grabbed the phone. "You're too persistent. Can't you read the room?" he chastised. "Whether Raymond is in the hospital or not, your constant calls are irritating." With that, he ended the call abruptly, leaving me reeling from the blunt rejection. The harsh dismissal from my in-laws cut deeper than I had anticipated, shattering any remaining hope for reconciliation. At that moment, I made a solemn vow to myself. If they didn't want me to contact them, fine. I wanted nothing more to do with them. I would never reach out again, no matter the circumstances. Following Raymond's recovery, which thankfully involved a mild gastric ulcer, he strictly adhered to his medication and experienced significant improvement. I shared the entire ordeal with Raymond, who listened with a resolute determination. "Let's distance ourselves from my family," he declared firmly. "The only person who matters to me now is you, Nancy. If they can't accept you, then they're not family to me, regardless of blood ties." A year later, Raymond pursued his long-standing aspiration to establish a software sales business, drawing on his previous job experience. His relentless dedication paid off, and even though our venture was still in its nascent stages, seeing even a fraction of his vision materialize filled me with immense joy. Our happiness was further amplified by the arrival of our healthy baby boy, a year into Raymond's entrepreneurial journey. My parents shared in our elation, frequently visiting us despite the lengthy journey from their home. We opted not to inform Raymond's parents of our son's birth, certain that their indifference would remain unchanged. Their silence since our last confrontation offered us a sense of relief, freeing us from the burdensome ties of a strained relationship. Several months later, as the global pandemic of the new coronavirus swept across the world, our country declared a state of emergency, urging citizens to stay indoors. News broadcasts were inundated with discussions of the pandemic's impact, particularly on industries such as restaurants and tourism. While my heart ached for those affected, I briefly wondered about Raymond's father's package tour company, but it was merely a passing thought. As we navigated through the challenges, I noticed a troubling change in Raymond. He became ill and was rushed to the hospital with severe stomach pains. later diagnosed as a suspected gastric ulcer. Consumed with worry, I insisted he take some time off work, and I stayed by his side through his hospital visits and tests. Despite these mounting challenges, we were careful about how much we involved Raymond's family. I remembered his mother's stern words, limiting our communication to only weddings or funerals. Yet, I couldn't keep such significant news about Raymond's health from them. With a heavy heart, I picked up the phone, my hand trembling as it dialed their number. The phone rang, each tone twisting my stomach into tighter knots. When my mother-in-law answered, her voice instantly brought back a flood of negative feelings, a testament to our strained relationship. "Hello, it's Nancy. I apologize for not keeping in touch, but there's something important you should know. Raymond has been hospitalized. They suspect it might be a gastric ulcer, and he's undergoing further tests," I explained, hoping for a shred of concern or empathy. "A gastric ulcer?" "Probably from overworking," she replied dismissively, then added, "Please spare me from such trivial matters, I'm busy." Her cold indifference to her son's health shocked me. "Don't you care about Raymond at all?" I retorted, frustration boiling over. "I won't bother you again. I'll speak to Raymond directly." I was about to hang up when my brother-in-law took the phone. "You're too persistent. Can't you read the room?" he chastised. "Whether Raymond is in the hospital or not, your constant calls are irritating." He ended the call abruptly, leaving me reeling from their blunt rejection. This harsh dismissal cut deeper than I had anticipated, destroying any remaining hope for reconciliation. At that moment, I resolved never to reach out again, no matter the circumstances. Following Raymond's recovery from what turned out to be a mild gastric ulcer, he adhered strictly to his medication and saw significant improvement. I shared the entire ordeal with Raymond, who listened with resolute determination. "Let's keep our distance from my family," he declared firmly. "The only person who matters to me now is you, Nancy. If they can't accept you, they're not my family, regardless of our blood ties." A year later, Raymond pursued his long-standing aspiration of establishing a software sales business, leveraging his previous job experience. His dedication paid off, and our venture began to show promising signs of success. Our happiness was further amplified by the arrival of our healthy baby boy a year into Raymond's entrepreneurial journey. We decided not to inform Raymond's parents about our son's birth, convinced their indifference would remain unchanged. Months later, as the global pandemic swept across the world, our country declared a state of emergency. News reports discussed the impact on various industries, including restaurants and tourism. I briefly wondered about Raymond's father's package tour company, but dismissed the thought quickly. Despite the challenges, Raymond's business thrived. While the initial phase of our entrepreneurial journey saw some financial instability, recent months have brought a surge in income, surpassing even Raymond's previous earnings. Our future looked promising, a testament to our resilience in the face of adversity. During this period, Raymond began receiving numerous calls from his parents' home. Despite their persistent attempts at communication, Raymond was determined to avoid any interaction, intentionally ignoring the calls and disregarding the voicemails left behind. I often reassured him, "You don't need to worry about me. It's all right to reach out to them." While I harbored deep-seated disdain for his family, I couldn't shake the guilt of causing Raymond to sever ties with his parents. Yet Raymond remained resolute in his stance, affirming, "Nancy is my top priority, not my parents. If they can't accept you, regardless of their parental status, I can't hold them in high regard." Despite Raymond's steadfast avoidance, the persistence of his parents was relentless. Daily calls went unanswered, and then one day, a letter arrived from his family home bearing a startling message. "Our business is teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, and urgent financial discussions are necessary," it read. Their audacity was staggering, considering the estranged relationship they had imposed. We refused to entertain their demands, opting instead to let them face the consequences of their actions. "Let them face the repercussions of their decisions," I remarked. Soon enough, my phone began to ring incessantly. Occupied with work, I couldn't attend the calls, but a voicemail left a clear indication of Raymond's continued avoidance. It seemed they had resorted to contacting me, despite my explicit instructions to the contrary. Reluctantly, I listened to the message left on my voicemail, which simply stated, "Is this Nancy's number? If Raymond persists in his silence, I'll visit in person. Let him know." 3 days following the voicemail, Raymond and I found ourselves enjoying a rare day off together at home. Just as we settled in after lunch, the doorbell chimed, signaling an unexpected visitor. Peering through the monitor, I was met with the sight of my 5 in-laws standing at the doorstep. Surprised, I looked at Raymond, who let out a weary sigh. "We could just ignore them. They'll eventually give up," he suggested. However, I couldn't shake the sense of pity. "They've come all this way. It wouldn't hurt to let them in," I countered. After a brief moment of contemplation, Raymond relented, unlocking the door to face whatever awaited us on the other side. While I understood their difficult situation, I couldn't easily help someone who had previously cut off all ties with me. Yet, I was open to reconsidering if they showed true sincerity. My father-in-law tried to intimidate me, his face twisted with anger, but I stood firm, telling him calmly, "You're free to leave if you disagree." As he continued to plead for help, I remained resolute. Eventually, he asked the others to apologize, which led to a collective plea from the group. I politely declined their appeals, keeping my cool even as my father-in-law's frustration boiled over. He slammed his hand on the table and, in a burst of anger, grabbed my collar, accusing me of arrogance. Just as I was about to respond, Raymond intervened, firmly telling his dad not to touch me. His father snapped back, challenging Raymond's loyalty to me over his parents. Raymond was unyielding, stating, "Nancy is my priority. I cannot ignore mistreatment towards her, even from my parents. We don't need superficial apologies just for money. If you can't sincerely apologize, you need to leave." This made his father lash out physically, striking Raymond in the face. I was shocked and tried to calm the situation, but my father-in-law was beyond reason, continuing his aggressive behavior. In an attempt to protect Raymond, I tried to hold back my father-in-law, but he pushed me away, causing me to hit my head against the table, which started bleeding. While the other family members watched in shock, my father-in-law's rampage escalated as he demanded money and started ransacking the room. In desperation, I opened the balcony window and shouted for help. The police arrived soon after. Upon their arrival, my father-in-law switched to a calm demeanor, feigning innocence and claiming a misunderstanding. He tried to portray me as intoxicated and delusional. I explained to the police officer what happened, urging them to take action. He denied everything but lost his temper again and punched a hole in the wall, which led to his immediate arrest. The aftermath left Raymond with a minor facial injury, while I needed 13 stitches for the wound on my head. Despite feeling guilty about Raymond's injury, I was relieved that the continuous demands for money from my in-laws had stopped, giving them time to reflect on their actions. I later found out that my father-in-law had initially spoken well of me, but jealousy from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had poisoned their attitudes, leading to poor treatment. As a result of their actions and attitudes, my in-laws faced financial ruin. Their business failed and they lost their home, now living in a modest apartment and struggling to find work. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law, affected by his circumstances, fell into a gambling habit, and my sister-in-law's difficult personality hindered her job prospects. After these events, my father retired, leading to a decision for my parents and us to live together, a suggestion surprisingly made by Raymond out of concern for my parents' well-being. Now, with my parents' help with childcare, I'm able to balance my career and family life. Surrounded by my loving husband, supportive parents, and our beloved son, life feels incredibly fulfilling. I'm determined to cherish this happiness and remain grateful for every blessing.